Welcome to this forum for candidates who are running for the 3 open positions on the Northern Virginia Soil and Water Conservation Board. I am Sarah Mayhew from the League of Women Voters of the Fairfax area, and I will be the moderator. We are pleased to partner with many nonpartisan and nonprofit organizations to sponsor this forum. The co-sponsors were listed on the screen on a previous screen. The League and all of the co-sponsors are committed to supporting the democratic process. We appreciate the candidates taking the time to participate this evening and look forward to a lively and respectful exploration of the issues. There are 7 candidates running, 4 of whom join us this evening. Thank you to the audience for attending the forum. This is American democracy at its best, giving voters an opportunity to explore the candidates' positions and points of view. This will help voters make informed decisions when they vote. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for an opening statement. They will speak in the order in which they are listed on the ballot. Then they will have 1.5 minutes to answer each question and 1 minute for a closing statement in reverse order of their ballot listing. The timing will appear on the screen, and we will strictly follow the timing. Ms. Mandrell, please make your opening statement.
First, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum, Sarah for moderating it, and Lynn and Jessica for their assistance in preparing, especially for new candidates like me. What I'd like to say is that I have a long-time interest in environmental protection, and most recently have become very concerned about the effect urban overdevelopment is having on the forests, farmland, green spaces, and waterways of Fairfax County in particular, and Virginia in general. I think serving on the Northern Virginia Soil and Water Conservation District Board is a way for me to help shape policies and actions related to conservation and environmental protection and advocate for these across the county and possibly the state. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bitterly, would you please make your opening statement?
Yes, hi, I'm Rhonda Bitterly, and I too would like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum. I'm running for the Board of Directors of the Soil and Water Conservation District. I've had a lifelong interest in environmental issues, and I'm sorry, I need to start the video. And I earned a Master of Science degree in soil and water science. I also have extensive environmental experience in areas such as municipal solid waste, hazardous waste site management, domestic and international agriculture, water science issues, and geothermal energy. And so I'm interested in using my education and my professional work experience to serve as a director on the board. In addition to my education and my work experience, I have excellent communication skills. I'm able to communicate complex technical information clearly to people who don't have a technical background, and this will also serve a director well. I've been a resident of Fairfax County since 1990, and I would like to use my education, my work experience, and my enthusiasm to give back to the community and help address conservation issues in our county. Again, Rhonda Bitterly. I have a website where you can get more information, rb-soilandwater.com.
Thank you. Mr. Kerner, your opening statement, please.
Thank you, Sarah. And thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting the forum. I'm Chris Kerner, a professional engineer and a scientist for one of the 3 positions for Soil and Water District Director. My academic degrees are in chemistry, biology, and civil engineering hydrology. I'm the only incumbent running, but I am part of a Democratic endorsed team with Dana and Rhonda. I've spent 45 years as an environmental consulting regulator, using my technical and leadership skills to help clean up toxic waste sites around the world. My primary expertise is managing challenging groundwater contamination problems with surface waters wetlands habitat, and endangered species issues. I am a diplomat in the American Academy of Environmental Engineers, registered engineer in 11 states, and I have received the Fairfax County Environmental Excellence Award and the Friend of Trees Award. I'm also a Fairfax Master Naturalist. I've been very involved in county environmental work for a couple decades. I formerly chaired the Fairfax County Chesapeake Bay Preservation Ordinance Committee. I was also the former chair of the local Sierra Club group. Part of the reason I'm interested and have been on the board as the incumbent and as associate before them is I've known several of the staff, and we have very good staff since they first assisted me about 20 years ago when a developer caused siltation in a neighborhood lake. I really appreciate them. I expect their technical expertise and the values of the staff and our overall stewardship of the environment, and especially their dedication to helping others. I'm soon we'll have a lot more discussion on questions coming up. Thank you. Again, I'm Chris Kerner and running for one of the 3 seats.
Thank you. Ms. Barakat, your opening statement, please.
Hello, and first I want to thank the League for doing this entire event and all of the other events that you've done. Truly thank you for all this work, and thank you for everyone who's joining us tonight and for sharing your time to hear us. I'm Dana Barakat, and I am, as Chris and Rhonda said, I am running to be one of 3 soil and water conservation directors. I am on a slate with Chris and Rhonda, and these are people that are phenomenal. I was born and raised here. I went to school, all public schools in Fairfax, and I care very much about the environment. My focus is really on community building and advocacy, and that's really where I think I can help in this. The environment is a human right. It appeals to everyone. You just have to understand how. And I believe that's what I can do.
Thank you. Now we will move to the first question. The focus of, and the first person to answer the question will be Ms. Bitterly. The focus of the Conservation District Board's work is reducing soil erosion and improving water quality. What previous experience or training has prepared you to understand the technical aspects of the board's work? She's muted. Can I unmute her?
No, just ask her to unmute herself.
I'm sorry. Yes, it's my master's degree in soil and water science and my extensive environmental work experience that will help me address these issues.
Mr. Kerner.
Well, as I described in my bio a little bit, my whole career has been on water quality and improving it, and mostly with groundwater, but an awful lot in creating, constructing wetlands. One of the issues that I had mentioned was the 20,000 yards of eroded silt that was in my backyard. And I worked extensively with the county folks and was responsible to helping reorganize and look at some of the variance programs within the county that has significantly reduced the volume and control of water coming into the creeks. The board does tremendous work through our conservation assistance program and our Virginia conservation assistance program. Fairfax County, we're very lucky, has given us like 3/4 of our budget, about $700,000, and is really focused on working for stream restoration, rain gardens, conservation landscaping that all help with the water quality issues. I've also communicated, I was part of a policy group for the resource protection area on the county and helped develop new policy for looking at how we look at the riparian habitats. For basically on water quality and soil and water, I've spent my whole career working on that at very high levels.
Thank you. Ms. Barakat, your response?
I think these technical aspects are so important because this is why most people don't even know what soil and water is. And the people who need it the most, this is where they suffer, because to truly understand, they just don't. And if they understand, they don't know how to access things. That's really where I think my strengths come in terms of talking to the common person and explaining these technical aspects.
Thank you. Ms. Madrell, your response?
As an officer in the Navy, I was responsible for ensuring U.S. Navy installations and vessels complied with regulations protecting U.S. and international land areas and waterways. I did this in Europe and in Asia and here in the United States, not in Virginia, but this is something that gives you a bigger perspective, perhaps, than what you're looking at simply in a community. And so while it's not directly related to what's happening in Virginia, I understand how to implement these things. I understand how to carry out policies and shape policies. So that's the experience that I bring. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kerner, would you start with the second question? The Northern Virginia Soil and Water Conservation District Board of Directors monthly meetings are open to all. How many have you attended?
I've attended all since I've been a director, and I've been an associate director 3 years before then, and I think I only missed one at that time. In addition, there are also the week before the board meetings, technical advisory group meetings, and I'm one of the voting members on that. All of the board members are not, and I don't think I've missed but one of those either in 5 or 6 years. But most of those during the COVID part were held remotely, so I was still voting and attending. And those are very interesting meetings on both cases.
Thank you. Ms. Barakat, your response?
I'm not on soil and water, but I have been attending meetings.
And how many have you attended?
4 or 5.
Ms. Madrell, your response?
Sadly, I'm not able to attend the meetings at this time because I'm an enrolled student at the Northern Virginia Community College, and the meetings occur smack in the middle of one of my classes. I would view the recordings if they were available, but so far I haven't been able to work out how to do that.
Ms. Bitterly, your response?
Yes, I heard Chris Kerner speak at a meeting earlier this year, and that's when he made the comment that they're always looking for good people to run for the board of directors. And so I have been attending board meetings ever since I made contact with him about possibly running for the board. And that has been since about March or April of this year, and I've attended all of them since that time.
For our third question, we'll start with Ms. Barakat. What are some key priorities that you would have if elected to the board?
Thank you for asking that. Key priorities would be to ensure that the 1.2 million residents of Fairfax County know what soil and water is, know what programs they have, because once again, these are the people that, especially in the communities that are not represented, the immigrant communities. Those are the people who truly need these programs and don't know how to access them. And the problem with that is you have to meet them where they are. You have to understand their learned experiences. So my priority is ensuring that every single person not only understand what soil and water does, not only understand the programs, but have the tools to access them and to fight the barriers that there are in terms of this issue.
Thank you. Ms. Madrell?
Thank you. I would say one of my top priorities is to attempt to mitigate the destructive impact of utility-scale solar farms on the forests and green spaces across Virginia to the extent that the Soil and Water Board is able to do that, and to put pressure on the developers of these farms to comply with the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality regulations. One thing that we could do here in Fairfax County is work to amend our building codes to require transition to rooftop solar farms, especially on commercial buildings. I would also argue before the Board of Supervisors to exponentially increase the funding to the Soil and Water Board to help it perform stated missions across the community. For example, subsidizing community and individual soil and water conservation projects, removal of invasive species, promoting urban agriculture, and creation of native plant and rain gardens. Like Dana says, most people have never really heard of the Soil and Water Board, so a much stronger community outreach effort is needed, and that includes greater visibility in Richmond. As a citizen, I would hope the Soil and Water Board could also promote the use of lawn and garden products that do not contaminate runoff, and also to counter the effects of road runoff by working with the Board of Supervisors to amend road building and improvement codes to transition to permeable cool road technologies. Apart from the beneficial impact it would have on soil and water, it would also reduce ambient heat on our roadways. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bitterly, your response?
Yes, my priorities would be to provide the support to the staff that the staff members need to carry out the stormwater management and erosion and sedimentation control issues that they're facing. Also, another very high priority for me is to get more resident involvement in contributing to the solutions. Getting people to replace part of their turf or most of their turf with native species that will help mitigate flooding, mitigate pollution. It would capture carbon from the atmosphere, and it would address drainage and erosion issues. I think that's just a very critical part of what the Soil and Water Conservation District is going to have to do. And I would like to see that as a priority. And along with that is outreach, because we need to communicate with the residents about their responsibilities and about everything that's available to them to help them meet those responsibilities.
Thank you. Mr. Kerner, your response?
It's a difficult question because we have so many priorities going on at the same time. And that's what part of makes the board interesting. I think as Rhonda said, the board's major role is for advocating for staff and for getting them adequate funding. We've been very successful with our various partners within Fairfax County and the state in doing that. The Virginia Conservation Assistance Program has been in place for a while. We just got significant increase in the county program to help out in places that may not meet the more standard criteria throughout the state, which is more of an agricultural soil and water districts rather than our urban one. We just signed 2 MOUs with the Office of Environment and Energy, both one for solar cars and one for helping to improve grants for energy efficiencies. We've got another one for urban agriculture, helping poor communities really develop community gardens. And we have an excellent person, Stacey Evers, working on that project. One of my colleagues who's the legislative chair and I have been on a series of discussions with our local representatives and state senators to look at some of the solar issues and make sure that the large scale solar farms do not cut down prime forest or use prime ag land in order to kind of trade off one thing for another. We also run the seedling sale. And
Mr. Kerner, your time is up.
Okay, sorry.
Ms. Medrell, you get to start with the next question. What has the Northern Virginia region done, or what should it do to enhance our water quality?
Well, first of all, I think we should make an effort to mitigate runoff. We should make an effort to participate with state and federal organizations who are involved in either water cleanup or improving water quality. We should continue to do the work that the board has done with promoting rain gardens and anti-erosion efforts in residential areas, and particularly in commercial areas. And that may very well mean at least attempting to hold developers accountable for making sure that the anti-erosion and infrastructure management requirements are in place before they actually begin their developments. I live over here in the Tysons area, and it's not entirely clear to me that these things are being done. I would defer to Mr. Kerner and those who've been on the board to answer this question more completely. But if you drive down Route 7, there are significant areas where you can see erosion, and I think this is probably true across the county as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bitterly, your response?
Yes, to control pollution, I believe that critical efforts are going to involve increased stormwater management, and that will help pull pollutants out of the water through the engineered solutions there. Also, getting residents to plant native species. Those native species will pull up pollutants and get that out of the water. Plus, if you're planting native species, you're not having as much lawn and not putting as much fertilizer or other chemicals on the lawn, and that will help as well.
Thank you. Mr. Kerner?
Sorry, took a minute to hit unmute. One of the things that is a little frustrating is we're not either a regulatory agency or an enforcement agency. And even though we may see things that are clearly notice of violation worthy, we don't get to do anything about them. Our staff are viewed as technical experts, and I've helped out some of those because of my expertise. And we're often called to mediate and try and help with violations that have happened and find a reasonable solution in the middle ground that can help solve a number of those problems. We're very active in trying to promote native plants, and we partner with the North Virginia Native Plant Society. We're big on turf removal and tree planting with the seedlings, and all of those help build good water quality. I would like, and I've tried somewhat, COVID kind of got in the way, to work in the lower part of the county in the Mount Vernon area that's very subject to high level of impervious surfaces and runoff that stresses a lot of those older homes, and to try and do things in a more community base rather than just a one grant or a project at a time. And I'll end there so I don't go over again.
Thank you. Ms. Barakat, your response?
I want to echo everything everyone said because it's true. I also want to say that the how of it is very important. How are we going to do these things? And I think it does go back to education and to ensuring that the residents, if they want it, that is so much more powerful than anything we can do. So it comes to understanding who is our audience, and to the environment applies to everyone. You just have to understand how. And then you talk about these practices. But just to assume that people know what anyone's talking about, we should first ask them and then educate them about these things.
This is perhaps a follow-up question to the prior one. Ms. Bitterly, you get the first response. How can the board increase citizens' awareness and support for improving water quality?
By talking to people. I know that Chris is very involved with talking to people. And as I've been campaigning, I've been talking to a lot of people and I've increased awareness. I've also had a lot of people say, will you come talk to my community group, that type of thing. I think we can put increased emphasis on that. And, the Soil and Water Conservation District isn't a regulatory agency. We'll have to rely on things like the stormwater management solutions, and also what individuals can do to increase water quality through the practices on their lawns. At the last board meeting, which was at the end of September, the board members were talking about just how much of an impact individuals can have and how crucial their involvement is. And so that's the approach I would take.
Mr. Kerner, your response.
That's one of the biggest issues we always try and talk about is how can we educate folks and have more community outreach in folks we do. We have had over, I think we're about 110 green breakfasts now, where every other month we used to have them in person, and we'd have 60 or 80 people showing up for a different presentation on some environmental subject. Now we're doing them remotely because the restaurant that we had them at was closed down during COVID. We have a very strong education program. We do scholarships. We have different environmental fairs. We have 2 staff people that work fully on communication and community outreach. The urban ag program, particularly in folks that wouldn't really have the time to be noticed by Northern Virginia Soil and Water, has really made an effort and been very well received in the community. And we're trying very hard to get more grant monies to help expand that program. Most of the time when I do campaigning, I just talk about what we did at the last board meeting and try and give people an understanding of how many different things we're involved in. But in a county of this size, that's primarily urban, soil and water doesn't get as much notice as we would like.
Ms. Barakat, your response?
My response is coalition building, community organizing, reaching out to community leaders, from various communities, from all faiths, because these are the people that can get the message to larger numbers of people. We need to be strategic because, like Chris said, this is a huge county with 1.2 million residents. So it would be very strategic to do coalition building, to educate. From town halls to anything, really.
Ms. Madrell, your response?
Well, I think you have to echo what everyone else has said. I mean, it really is an outreach opportunity. It really is an advocacy opportunity. As we've been working up to the election, I've gone to, I don't know how many festivals and participated in back to school nights and am present at early voting to engage the citizens wherever I can, just to simply say, what can I tell you about the Soil and Water Conservation District? And everyone is right. I mean, this is something that most people don't know anything about. And so there's a huge advocacy effort that needs to be made, whether it's through social media, whether it's through simply being out in the community for every opportunity possible. I'm on my HOA board of directors and offered a presentation at one of our annual gatherings and reached 60, 70 people that way. People I can guarantee you who probably would never go to the Fairfax County website without having known a little bit more about it. I was at a group the other night that had 40 or 50 people. And again, there's tremendous interest when you make it relative to people where they are. Just like Dana said, you have to meet them where they are. And where they are is their backyards and their gardens and what they're doing in the community with the parks and recreational facilities and so on. So that is just the best way to do it, Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kerner, we'll start with you for the next question. More affordable housing is needed in Fairfax, but how can this be accomplished while also addressing environmental concerns such as increased stormwater runoff and soil erosion?
That's a tough and good question because that's the heart of a lot of our stormwater problem in this urbanized county. And as impervious surfaces increase with the building, particularly of larger homes, that water runs off much faster, gets into the creek. It's called the time of concentration. And it is very bad in health for the creek because it increases erosion and the volume goes through quickly, higher than our older infrastructure is able to handle. And if I had the ability to change a lot of our county codes, I would work on making sure that they call it adequate outfall, but it's based on old numbers. But I'd make sure that the communities have the infrastructure available to handle the increased flow and work on low impact development type of things that keep as much of that water on a person's site as it can happen in order to slow down that flow and help alleviate some of the destruction that happens downstream. but it's got to be a retrofit type of thing too. And we're making some progress, but it's very, very slow. It's not really our board responsibility to help fix that, but I wish we did have more voice on it.
Ms. Barakat, your response?
I want to echo what Chris said. It's a little bit, this is not something that we can really do or have any authority over. But first off, everybody should be able to live where they work. That's basic human right. In terms, again, there's nothing that we can do. Ideally, I can give you an ideal like scenario where everything works together and is cohesive, but you have to leave that to the people in the assembly.
Ms. Madrell, your response?
That's a really interesting question. I mentioned earlier that one of the reasons I couldn't go to the board meetings was because I'm a full-time student at Nova, and one of the degrees that I'm pursuing there is in interior design with regard to commercial and residential building particularly. And my focus is on the creation of micro-communities to serve underserved populations who perhaps can't break into the Northern Virginia market. And the designs that I have been looking at all involve green building systems and sustainable best practices, making as much use as possible of alternative energies. As Mr. Kerner said, one of the things we have to look at is moving away from impermeable surfaces to permeable surfaces, you know, making sure we have as much green space as possible to reduce soil erosion and help stormwater management. But when you're looking at affordable housing, there are many, many opportunities to work with the Board of Supervisors in the county to look at land that the county has that could be turned over to micro communities, perhaps built around an urban farm. There are plenty of opportunities out there. It just takes imagination and advocacy to identify them and build coalitions of support. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bitterly, your response?
Yes. It seems to me that building affordable housing isn't that much different than any other type of construction that might occur. So in the planning of these things, of any affordable housing projects or any kind of project, we have to build resilience into those plans. We also have to use impervious, we have to get away from using impervious surfaces and using more permeable ones where we can. And this creates a lot of challenges. And I think that some of this impact can be mitigated by the rest of the residents in this county taking responsibility to plant the native species and install rain gardens, use rain barrels, do what they can to mitigate the effects. Also, there are some emerging technologies that are very, very interesting that can address water quality. For example, they are looking at not sending all wastewater to a centralized wastewater treatment plant. They're looking at options of treating it more locally. And so we've got some
Thank you. Your time is up, Ms. Bitterly.
Thank you.
Ms. Barakat, you begin with the next question. There are several agencies that have a role in overseeing development and protecting our natural resources. How do you envision coordinating the efforts of the Soil and Water Conservation Board with the Zoning and Planning Committee and the Urban Forester to protect existing tree canopy?
Wow. First off, we have to ensure that every partner that we find the things that we have in common and that we have a set goal together. The foundation of everything is what matters. If there's a solid foundation moving forward, it can be done. I do not want to sit here and just say things, but that's my response.
Thank you. Ms. Madrell, your response?
Well, with quite a bit of experience in interagency interagency cooperation. I think the most important thing to bring to the table when you're talking about something as important as environmental protection is transparency and a clear understanding of what everybody's equity is in going forward. I mean, if you talk to citizens, they will tell you that they're very frustrated about things like urban overdevelopment, soil and water protection, but they don't really know where to go, and they don't really know what these agencies are responsible for doing. And so there needs to be much greater transparency from the Board of Supervisors to say, if we're going to do development, these are the things that are our priorities. And to be perfectly honest, the first priority cannot be getting more money from developers and commercial interests, particularly here in Northern Virginia. But without a specific example, you know, I have to give you a general answer: transparency.
Thank you. Ms. Bitterly, your response?
I've been attending the board meetings now for several months, and I have been impressed by the number of partnerships that the Soil and Water Conservation District has with county and state and national partners. And there's a forester that attends the meetings regularly. I'm not sure how things work with the zoning. I imagine that the Soil and Water Conservation District Board is invited to get involved in some of the zoning considerations, or if there's some kind of solution that needs some kind of waiver to a zoning requirement, I imagine that the board can have some input into that. I'll probably be much more knowledgeable at a later time about this, but I'm impressed by the level of partnership and getting all the partners involved, and a lot of them attending the board meetings.
Mr. Kerner, your response?
That's another one of those frustrating parts, because zoning is really not one of the agencies that we work with. As everyone has said, partnership is really one of our strengths. We have a great network of folks, and at the board meetings, we go through a list of outside partners that talk about what they're up to. And the state forester is attended and been very valuable in all our technical and board meetings. We do have the urban forestry folks. We do work for conservation management plans that directly affect some of the zoning decisions, and we interact there, but we follow the zoning rules when we do those kind of assessments of property. We also do planning for the ag and forestry districts and help, particularly looking at protecting our streams as far as the resource protection areas, make sure the buffers are honored and that we don't get a lot of animals in there if we're dealing with some of the equestrian folks that we're dealing with. But we have the state forester, various county managements. We deal and have very good relationships with senior managers throughout the county. And I just met with Public Works last week for some of the new initiatives that we're working with. I wish we did have more effect, but the zoning laws are sort of in place, and we just work with following them.
Thank you. Ms. Madrell? This is a follow-up question, apparently to the responses that people gave. Please name a partner group other than Fairfax County government agencies and explain how you would encourage the board to work with that organization. So one of the current partners of the Soil and Water Conservation District, how would you encourage the board to work with that organization?
Well, I think no matter what organization it is, and I'll be honest and say I don't have a list of the partners in front of me here, is that you have to leverage whatever whatever information that you have and whatever you can do to share the opportunities that you have to accomplish your goals. As Mr. Kerner said, because the board is not an enforcement agency and they're not a legislative agency, anything that they do has to take advantage of the strengths of both organizations to complement each other. And I suppose that if you're looking at a government agency outside of Fairfax County and you're looking at what's happening with the state, the best thing to do is to be an advocate with legislative bodies across the state who are arguing for environmental protection. there are a number of those that are nonprofits. There are a number that are not governmental agencies themselves, but you have to take advantage of what they're prepared to do. And you have to bring something to the table that shows that you are able to go out inside your own communities and make a difference. And I'm well aware that the Soil and Water Board has a number of community activities in which they engage in a number of partners with whom they work. But without a much stronger advocacy effort and a much stronger understanding in the community of what the Soil and Water Board does, I think Mr. Kerner and anyone else on the board is likely to continue to feel a certain level of frustration over their effectiveness.
Thank you. Ms. Bitterly, your response?
I'm not sure that I completely understand the question, but I'm not sure if the Fairfax County school boards are partners. And I would like to see increased interaction with the school boards. And maybe Chris knows more about this than I do, but it would be really critical, I think, to get the schools involved, the children involved. And so I would like to see that. Other partners, I think that once I'm on the board, I would seek partnerships with others. I would have my radar up looking for partners that could contribute to this, especially partners in innovative solutions.
Mr. Kerner, your response?
We have a lot of partners, as I mentioned before. As Rhonda just mentioned, one of the initiatives that I had last time was to increase our relationship with the school board, and particularly their Get to Green program within the Fairfax County Public Schools. However, right after we were sworn in as board members, COVID hit, and that kind of put the school board on a much more important things to worry about than how to coordinate with us. Several of the groups, earlier when I forgot that I was on the resiliency committee that the county put together to really look at flooding and stormwater climate change initiatives. And we're just seeing some of their grant programs coming to us because we can do things that the county can't do, particularly in getting payments out to grant applicants. And we've done very well with that. We have a strong partnership with Plant Nova Natives, the Tree Commission, the Master Naturalist Group, several of our staffs to actually teach in that program. We've got a spider web of networks, and we're good at using some of them together, but COVID did hurt us the last few years, and I think we're suffering some from that, and also from some retirements of some key network folks we have. But we've got strong relationships, particularly through the county and the state, and we're continuing to build with them.
Thank you. Ms. Barakat?
Like Chris said, there are so many partners. The USDA is one that I would particularly engage for a few things, actually. One would be TRAPA, the water chestnut, and to increase the funding that's going to exterminating that.
Thank you. Our next question is a broad one. Green space reduces pollution and urban heat islands effect. Green space also provides areas for children to play and relaxation and mental health benefits for children and adults. Green space appears to be vanishing in the Fairfax area. What, if anything, can the board do to reverse this trend? Ms. Bitterly?
There are several things that can be done. The one thing I'm thinking of right now is they've got parking reimagined. We've got a lot of impervious surfaces, parking lots, and a lot of time that area goes unused. Parking Reimagined is trying to maybe decrease the size of the parking lots and develop other parking solutions. And that would include bicycling lanes, that type of thing. So also again, I would urge planting native species and planting trees in disadvantaged areas to do away with the heat islands. And also in the planning of efforts, these things need to be baked into the planning efforts. We need to keep those in mind.
Thank you. Mr. Kerner.
Another frustration that in the growing community where there's a lack of housing, how to build invisible housing where we have green spaces that people can live. We do a lot of work with seedlings and native plants. I've been involved in, I think, about 20 years of our seedling sale. And last year we sold at a very minimal cost, I think 13,000 seedlings that are native plants and working with folks. And then we also coordinated a whole bunch of those for some of the lower income communities to get plants in areas there. I'm certainly a big favor of open green space. You know, it's critical to my mental health. There is several cross efforts as far as housing, green space, environmental protection, and it always makes it difficult for us to deal with. And you know, we do the best we can working with our partners to develop as much as we can as continued green space.
Thank you. Ms. Barakat?
Many of us don't stay up all night thinking about these issues. And I'm going to go back to education and to being proactive. This is where we need to really make sure that people understand the importance. First off, let's make sure they understand what is a green space and go from there. And then second, just increasing education. And education does not mean a flyer or a pamphlet. It means, once again, knowing who you're speaking to, knowing what they care about, and using like the environment applies to everyone. So, but in terms of the green space, I'm with Chris and Rhonda.
Thank you. Ms. Madrell?
Well, if you're going to reverse the loss of green space, the first place you have to go and look, even in an advocacy role, is to changing the zoning requirements and to putting requirements on particularly commercial developers to include planning for green space and increasing tree canopy in their proposals, especially in an area like Northern Virginia. I mean, anybody listening to this who drives through Tyson's, it's now turning into a concrete jungle. And I'm afraid that planting 3 or 4 trees on the roof just really doesn't cut it when you are increasing your paved areas, when you're not using permeable road surfaces, when you're not doing the sorts of things that preserve the environment. And that requires citizens to sit down and take a look at zoning. It is education. But again, you have to make a choice between what's important, preserving the environment or expanding the tax base.
Thank you. Mr. Kerner, we'll begin with you for the next question. What skills or traits do you have that will allow you to contribute to the effective operations of the board as a whole and with the board's work with other governmental agencies?
Well, as I mentioned in the beginning, you know, I have an extensive technical ability. One of the biggest strengths that I've brought to the current board is I'm now the treasurer and the secretary. And I've really worked on how we do grants and our costing ability to make sure that we recover adequate costing when some of our staff are doing projects for other entities particularly, and that the management time is factored in there, and that relates to the retention of our staff. And we have some very good people. I used to say that they all have an altruistic gene because they really care about helping people. And they're willing to forego some of their career benefits as far as salary and benefits. Although we've done a lot in the last 4 years to help increase that, and I'm proud of the work that I've been contributing to that. But that's the work of our staff is really, I think, the biggest role that the board is out there, because they're the ones within the community every day on the projects and the grants, and they perform consultant level high quality work. And some of those, 2-page emails that they put together for somebody that's got a stormwater issue, they're very valuable, and they just rip off those 10 or 15 a month. And it does make an effort. The folks that have used the staff and the board's capabilities recognize how good they are. We just have to get it out to 1 million people.
Your time is up, Mr. Kerner. Ms. Barakat, your response?
My apologies in advance, but I do have to talk about the staff and the volunteers. They are the ones that are making everything happen. They are doing so much. And if you met these people, if you saw these people, they are really doing the most challenging work. And they do truly phenomenal people. And I would really hope that, like Chris said, that we ensure that their pay is right, and also to make sure that people have access to them. You would be shocked if you call them at any time. They will give you the response that you want. And then in terms of the question, this is what I'm very good at, is building these relationships and finding for a common cause that helps everyone. If everyone is going to, if everyone gets something out of it, it's much easier to do something. But I want to really emphasize again, the staff and the volunteers, because 80% of the work is done by these people.
Thank you. Ms. Mardrell, your response?
Well, as a Navy officer, I spent almost 3 decades working within and across large bureaucracies and building coalitions and advocating for policies that involved a coalition to bring them into fruition. This is, I cannot emphasize enough how important it is that there is a group of dedicated professionals with technical expertise on the board. And this is particularly true, I think, important for the appointed members of the board to bring the technical expertise to this issue. But one thing that I bring to this is that as a citizen, I see my primary role as advocating for the community and advocating for the average citizen in Fairfax County and for the taxpayers of Fairfax County. Because whether the money that's being spent is going to what is really quite a small budget for the Soil and Water Conservation Board, there needs to be a much greater commitment, a much greater financial commitment across the county. And this is something that as a citizen, I feel particularly equipped for which to advocate.
Thank you. Ms. Bitterly.
Yes, I think the skill that I bring that would contribute to effective operations of the board and with effective communications with other agencies is leadership. And part of that leadership involves listening skills. I'm good at listening, and I'm good at evaluating the input that's received, and also developing options and the pros and cons of those options, and developing recommendations. Also, I believe very strongly in information sharing and not hoarding information. A lot of places I've worked tend to hoard information and not share. That doesn't happen with the Soil and Water Conservation District. Chris and Dana and Deborah have said, there's a lot of cooperation there, but you need to get everybody at the table. You need to be on the lookout for other people who need to be on the table. You listen to everybody and you make sure you communicate out every decisions, information that's needed by everybody.
Thank you. This is our next to the last question, and I'd like original responses, not something that's been done in the past. Please describe a new way that you will raise the visibility of the board's services. Ms. Barakat, would you please start?
Once again, I would identify who are the people that we need to talk to, because that's the most important thing, is knowing the stakeholders, and everyone is a stakeholder in the environment. But with that also becomes just engaging all aspects of society in Fairfax County and making sure that we know their issues of concern, but also making sure that when there is a message that we know that they will spread that message. That makes the work so much easier. But once again, if we don't identify them properly and cultivate those relationships properly, the rest doesn't matter.
Thank you. Ms. Madrell, your response?
I think a much greater outreach is needed particularly in the media. The presence that the Soil and Water Board has in social media and the outreach efforts that they've made to the community are excellent, but they reach a very small group. And if it takes pounding on somebody's table to say, come and talk to us, or trying to get yourself on the agenda of a meeting outside the partnership groups that already exist. When I drive into Vienna, I see 10 different community organizations on the Welcome to Vienna sign. I would want to be at every meeting that they have, whether I was just there to advocate or provide information or an update on what's happening with the board, but particularly to engage our local media on the ground, the Fairfax Connection, the Fairfax Times, in Nova. There must be a dozen of these that only carry stories about the soil and water, the activities of the Soil and Water Board when something big happens, like what's happening with Lake Accotink. And the only way you're going to reach people in the way that everyone has described is if you are constantly out there pounding on a table. Now, that may not be a new and different way. I don't know. I guess I could hire an airplane with a thing that flies across the sky, or one of those bullhorn trucks that candidates use. But it's really just doing the walking the pavements, just like police officers doing an investigation. You have to be out there. You have to be visible to the community as often as you possibly can. And that is a full-time job that the staff themselves can't do.
Ms. Bitterly?
I don't think we can go out and create new communications channels, but maybe we can use communications in a different way. For example, people respond to stories, I think, much more than presenting facts and figures. So maybe we could concentrate on telling stories. When I've been out talking with people, I was talking with one resident who told me about how a neighbor of hers cut down a number of trees in his yard, and that what effect that had on her yard started flooding. So if we tell stories like this, we can get people more involved and interested in, oh, well, what can the Soil and Water Conservation District do to help residents out with that kind of situation? Also, I think we can seek to engage people more by showing something and asking for their reaction. For example, we can show a sign that the Soil and Water Conservation District might put out regarding a stormwater retention pond and ask people, what do you think this means? What's the implication of this? What's the county doing for us to solve conservation issues? And just get the word out, maybe in a different way.
Thank you. Mr. Kerner?
Well, that's a tough question for me, because if I had thought of one, I would have been trying to do it already. We did mention the schools and try and work more closely, but we do have a pretty extensive group that works with the schools. I had briefly mentioned that I've started to work with Mount Vernon and Franconia, which are the downstream counties or downstream districts in our county, and they get the brunt of a lot of the quick flow coming from our upstream areas, and really trying to look at not just small improvements like rain gardens or conservation landscaping issues, but figuring out where we can use some land that is green space, dedicate it for that, but maybe also have it where it can take some of the flooding and the higher water flows and keep them out of people's basements. One of the examples that we have started a new way is Dana mentioned the Trappa initiative, and hardly anybody knows, unless you have a lake, that this is a very invasive mat growing that will just block out everything else. And I chair the eradication committee that we set up. We actually went out for a NASA grant. We didn't have all the federal numbers we needed, so we weren't really good for this year. We've also looked, as Dana mentioned, to Department of Agriculture. We've looked for remote sensing. That's what we were doing with the NASA, to be able to use drones to fly over and look at spectral wavelengths to be able to tell where some of these growths are. It's all in Fairfax and Prince William County right now, but it has the potential
you.
to really cover a big area.
Thank you, Mr. Kerner. It's also moved into the Newport News area. All right, our final question. What nature moment or experience ignited your interest in a political seat that takes so much time and pays no salary? Ms. Medrell, would you please start?
Well, I have to be very honest and say it was two things. The first one was learning about what was happening with utility scale solar farms and the way they're destroying green spaces across the Tri-County area here, but also across Virginia. And I realize the board doesn't have that much control over it, but I just find that the impact on the environment, the way it's affecting the aquifer, the way it leads to erosion is stunning. And when I saw a picture of one of these farms and the land underneath it, I would have thought it was on Mars, to be perfectly honest. It looked so absolutely terrible. So that was my first aha moment. And since then, I have been doing what I can to educate myself with regard to the other projects that the board has been involved in, things such as the management of Lake Accotink, what's happening with the invasive species, and so on. I mean, it's just one of those things that hits you in the face and you say to yourself, all right, you know, somebody needs to be an advocate for this across the community. And so that was my moment.
Thank you. Ms. Bitterly.
I've always been interested in the environment. And so I was interested in running for this board after I heard Chris speak at a meeting. But I must say that after the summer that we had, it kicked my interest into high gear. I'm originally from Phoenix, Arizona, and that's where they had the heat wave of a month of over 110 degrees each day. And we had the wildfires and floods. All of those events and the very impressive evidence that we have that our climate is changing just kicked it into high gear and makes me even more enthusiastic about serving on the board.
Mr. Kerner.
I've always liked the outdoors, the environment. I was an Eagle Scout and did a lot of camping across the country when I was young. Here, when I bought my house in 1995, it was a fixer-upper on a small lake, and I could way exceed your time limit on this one. But within a year, an upstream development on 28 acres didn't follow any of the erosion control laws on a steep slope and ended up putting about 20,000 cubic yards in my backyard part of the lake. I spent a lot of time with the county, who at that time didn't have a very good, strong program in stormwater management. And then I eventually got a federal enforcement order because I worked closely with EPA against the developer. There was a lawsuit by the county. I ended up getting the judgment money to dredge the lake myself and restored the whole riparian habitat, and also was involved in eliminating the variance program within the county and the stormwater management plans. And it was the beginning of when the county really started developing an environmental program within stormwater management and public works. And I got to know a lot of those folks very well, and some excellent people over there. So it's been personal, but it's also, we all have to respond to climate change and stewardship of the environment.
Ms. Barakat.
We are facing more challenges than ever before. What's happening right now is just, it needs people who care about the environment and people that know or have the ability to do something about it. It takes teamwork, first off. Teamwork is the most important thing. And you're not electing one seat, there's 3 people. And the most important thing is for these 3 people to be able to work together or nothing will get done. And I really believe that's important. I started working on TRAPA and I was knocked over the head when I realized how serious this was. And I was truly shocked. But at the end of the day, diversity, we keep saying this term over and over and over, but it's important to see it. It's important to have people who really care, who are representative of this district that is so diverse, and women especially, but Chris is first off, hands down, amazing. Have a seat at the table.
Thank you. Finally, we will have the closing statements from all the candidates. Ms. Barakat, please go first with your closing statement. You have 1 minute.
Thank you so much, first off, for everything that everyone has done for tonight. I'm Dana Barakat. I am running for Soil and Water. I am 1 out of 3 candidates, and I am running on a slate with Rhonda and Chris. And I am someone who cares. I am someone who does the work, and I could say everything that I should say, but the truth is the actions will tell. So please vote for me and Rhonda and Chris. Sorry.
Thank you. Mr. Kerner, you're next.
Thank you. I'd like to thank again. You've done a wonderful job moderating, and the panel, I've liked listening to it all. I won't summarize everything I said in the beginning, but I've been a former regulator. I've been very early on a lot of the federal laws and working with teams across the nation and in South America and Europe, where I led a lot of projects there. I've been on national expert panels at Hanford or Fort Detrick or the anthrax remediation. And as I mentioned, a bunch of my volunteer activities, it seems like a lot of times, because of my leadership and management and technical skills, I've ended up being a chair or vice chair of a number of those groups. And I think most importantly, I'm willing to put the time in that it takes, because these aren't easy problems or challenges to solve. And you really do have to spend some time with some background and expertise. And I look forward to everyone voting, and I would appreciate your vote. And I'd like to serve for 4 more years on the board.
Thank you, Mr. Kerner. Ms. Bitterly.
Yes, I'm Rhonda Bitterly. I'm running for the Soil and Water Conservation District Board of Directors. And I feel that I'm in the right place and it's the right time to run for the board. This is what I bring to the table. I bring an MS degree in soil and water science. I bring extensive environmental experience, great communication skills, and enthusiasm to do this work. I have been supremely impressed with the Soil and Water Conservation District staff members through the volunteer work that I have done with them at the seedling sale and with my attendance at the board meetings. And I would welcome the chance to be able to serve on the board to support the work of the Soil and Water Conservation District staff in addressing the pressing conservation issues that our county faces. I'm endorsed by the Fairfax County Democratic Committee along with Chris and Dana. And although I have that endorsement, this is a nonpartisan office, and I hope.
Thank you very much. Ms. Madrell, your statement.
Again, thanks, Sarah, for a really, really excellent forum. I really enjoyed participating and hearing the responses. What I can say is that the protection of our environment has to be a priority for everybody. The most important thing any one of us can bring to the Soil and Water Board is a commitment to absolutely tireless advocacy for any issue related to the environment, particularly soil and water, obviously, for the people of Fairfax County. That's what I bring to the table. I have 20 odd years in the Navy that I could document where I did that, and I am prepared to do that. So please, on November 7th, vote for me. Thank you.
Thank you to all who participated in this forum. And I will tell you that this is personal for me. Not only am I a member of the League of Women Voters, but I volunteer with the Soil and Water Conservation District. So I have had a long participation with them. So thank you to the candidates, and thank you also to the audience. We invite you all to visit vote411.org to see additional information on the candidates and on the elections. You can use the QR codes that are on your screen now. You can also check out all of the voter registration and election information on our website. Thank you very much for attending this forum. Voting has already begun, so please vote and encourage your family, friends, and neighbors to do the same. Thank you.